Japan right now is worse than you could ever imagine. As only a few decades ago, a job is enough to feed the whole family, but now you can't even afford to rent, to have a relationship, or to travel and even put food on the table. And as someone who lived through the best and worst times in Japan, and seen how everyone has given up on the dream of things ever going back to normal, today I'm breaking down why it's still impossible for the locals to live in Japan that you simply wouldn't know if you don't live here.
And nobody wants to talk about this, but I believe if we don't admit that there's a problem, it'll never get better. So these are the reasons why life in Japan is only getting more difficult.
But in case you didn't know, Japan didn't used to be this way. In the 1990s, only a couple of decades ago, Japan was literally richer than Canada, the UK, Germany, and so much more. You used to look at the Japanese yen in your hand and think you were invincible. And nobody would have thought that the economy would take such a terrible turn for the worse, to the point that leaving Japan is more appealing than ever before. And most of my local friends are now living in nations like Australia because Japan is probably the only place in the world where you get paid less and less, only to work more and more every year. When I was a kid, I couldn't wait to grow up because the cafe outside was hiring for 1,400 Japanese yen an hour.
It would be about $13 to $14 an hour if you take the exchange rate back then into consideration. And that was big money back in the days.
But now when I go out, guess what I see? Stores, restaurants, and convenience stores hire people for 850 Japanese yen an hour. It was so low, I legit questioned if it was even legal. And no, don't forget all the crazy taxes and insurance you have to pay just to exist in Japan. Do you still have enough leftovers to get yourself a good meal? I doubt that. But if you're getting paid less, you must be doing less work, and that is also good. But that's never the case because the population of Japan has been going down forever. I'm sure that's no secret. So with fewer people able to work, with more and more tourists coming in, they're now working you like multiple people, but you're still being paid only one person worth of salary.
And you'll probably say that's the same across all the developed nations, where you're doing more but being paid the same, but there's no way you can compare to Japan when it comes to the next one.
Because now we're going to talk about the work culture in Japan, and the perfect time for you to subscribe to this channel before you get ready to watch the horror that is the job market in Japan. Because I've never seen a nation where you have to do so many stuff outside of work to the point you can't even have a family life going on. Like most people live outside of the city because nobody can afford to live there, so you wake up super early, commute literally hours to go to work, and wait, you also need to arrive early because that's the unspoken rule, everyone knows that. But can you at least get off of work on time? What are you, the main character in the anime? You're lucky to even leave before it's completely dark outside. But I have to be fair in saying that the younger generation in Japan is finally rebelling against the overworking culture, but with the society still being dominated by the older generation, especially with how many people outright choose to live and work abroad instead of tackling the work problem in Japan, it's unlikely to change anytime soon.
Also, we need to think about that because your wage is no longer enough to support even yourself. Many people I know are working a second or even a third job at night or during the weekend just to get by.
But hey, many nations also have terrible jobs. Like the majority of the Western countries ain't doing that good either. But the next one is so high on the list of why people are panicking to leave Japan, it will hopefully make you feel good that at least you don't have to be here in Japan. And that is the never-ending threat of earthquakes and tsunami. I read a report that says Japan has the most earthquakes based on the size of the nation. And to me, that's an understatement. Sometimes you have earthquakes multiple times a week. I legit can't find myself living in a place where I can't run to safety within a few seconds. And not to mention, at the time of this video, there's a rumor floating around saying that on July 5th this year, Japan is going to have the biggest earthquake in the history, and everyone I know is legit scared and planning to move or at least travel away. So it makes it really hard to see yourself settle down in Japan when a natural disaster can just come and take everything away from you.
And the worst thing about earthquakes is that you can predict it, but you know sooner or later one is going to happen, because that's how nature works. So if one doesn't happen on time, you get more worried.
But nothing will be more devastating for anyone living in Japan than the next thing on the list, and that is the locals are now seeing Japan as a hopeless society. And among the younger generations I've talked with, nobody sees Japan going anywhere but down. So many are choosing to move away to places with better paying jobs like Australia, and personally, I've never seen this many Japanese college graduates working abroad in my whole life. And the only ones that seem to be having fun in Japan are the tourists or foreign workers coming from even less fortunate nations where they still see Japan as a better option.
If there's anything positive I can still say about Japan, it's that the food is still some of the best, and it's still pretty fun if you want to visit for vacation. But if you still want to move to Japan, here are a few things I would consider.
And number one is, can you realistically live to only work and work to only be able to live? Because work-life balance is not a thing in Japan. Even if you don't want to, the peer pressure and constantly being compared to others will drive you to work harder and forget your basic needs and joy as a human being. And number two is, do you see your life being affected by the population crisis in Japan? Because sooner or later, there won't be enough people to keep up the workforce. And last but not least, would you be proud of being a part of Japan, even though the economy gets worse and worse, and everywhere you go, like a restaurant and a public bathroom, or any outdoor event, you have to wait forever in line because of over-tourism, all thanks to how weak the local currency is? And I'm saying this for everyone living here, is that we're tired of the Japanese yen being so weak compared to others to the point we can't even travel around or buy stuff made in other nations. The Japanese media and politicians will always tell us how the currency being weak is good for society, and the companies are making more money from exports, which in turn would take the money back into Japan. But we all know the money only goes back into the international investors. So with all of that going on, why wouldn't anyone want to leave Japan behind to go live in a place where we can easily make more money and actually buy a house?
But hey, before you think about that, why don't you worry about not making the same mistakes that so many tourists are still making in Japan? And if you don't know what they are, you can click on this video to find out.